What's up, everyone, and welcome back to Rob's Gaming Table. Today on the table, I have a special video for you. I have some spoiler cards for Game of Thrones: A Card Game 2nd Edition, brought to you by the folks over at Fantasy Flight Games. I want to thank them for sending these over so I can share them with you guys. I also just want to mention that I am getting this up as quick as possible here. I just got these cards not too long ago, and there were some threats in the Facebook group about leaking this 6th chapter pack, Daggers in the Dark, on Facebook. So I'm trying to get out ahead before that. So this video is kind of being done in a rush here, so I hope it's good for you guys. But yeah, let's cut to it here and get to the first card. I have some pretty cool cards here out of the pack, I'm sure. The first one we got here is a plot. It's a neutral plot, Ravages of War. It's a 4 gold, 6 initiative, a 1 claim, 6 reserve. It's got the war trait. When revealed, each player sacrifices a character or location, chooses and discards 1 card from his or her hand, and chooses and discards 1 card from his or her shadows area if able. So here are my first impressions on it. Obviously, take what I say with a grain of salt, and I have not played with these cards, so you know it's hard to judge them now, but I'm just going to give my initial thoughts, pros and cons here of them. So the stats, pretty middle of the road, not bad, not going to complain. 6 initiatives, always nice. 6 reserves, not bad. So the war trait is something that kind of sticks out. That works great with like King's Rob's Host and Vanguard of the North, who both work nice off having war traits revealed. And also Tyrion's Chain. This is another effect you might want to put in a Tyrion's Chain deck and start hitting this off repeatedly. It seems like it can be used aggressive or control wise. I'm not sure which way to go. I can just my instinct, sorry, see this as being a more control plot where like you are not playing shadows, or you're playing a longer game. You maybe don't have any characters worth anything on the board, or you don't care about your locations, and you're just kind of trying to hit your opponent, slow them down, delay the game until you put together your, late game Doran's Game or something like that. I see it in those those long-term decks, just trying to mess with your opponent through plot play. Also might be decent. I don't know. I was thinking attrition, but then it has that sacrifice a character or location. So your opponent could always choose a location if they don't want to hit their like last big characters. So it's not exactly like a March to the Wall in that respect, but still just a disrupting card. It also is great if you're not playing any shadows. Like I said, if shadows become big and you're not playing any shadows, this for sure guarantees you pretty much hitting your opponent's shadows. Making them discard a card and then you don't have one. So the idea of a plot like this, I assume, is to try to make sure this stuff doesn't hit you as hard as it hits your opponent. It also could be funny in Melee, I think, when everyone has to do this because it's each player sacrifices. So it could be some janky, wonky, crazy fun in Melee. Something cool about it, you can run 2 of these. So if if this goes with your control theme, you can definitely stick 2 of these in the plot deck. Doesn't have a plot deck limit, 1. Definitely seeing that word sacrifice. It's going to work great with Stark Sacrifice. This is another plot where you can, kind of on demand sacrifice a character. So the other thing is if you're benefiting off any of these things. So if you benefit off a card being discarded, so like having Queen Cersei in your deck and you're forcing the opponent to discard a card, there's another way to do that. Instead of like, heads on spikes or whatever, or in addition to heads on spikes, this could really benefit you. So like I said, great with sacrificing characters. If you're trying to sacrifice your own character with Stark, this is a great way to do it. It's a good plot for you then, and it still probably hurts your opponent pretty good. And then Queen Cersei definitely helps you get extra power. Also with the hitting locations, if you're at the point, say you're playing Greyjoy location control, I think this might be good for that, because if you're hammering the opponent's good locations, you kind of limit them down to, very little locations, and then you play a plot like this. Now they have to like probably get rid of a limited location or hit a character. So if you're doing your location control good, this could just add on top of that. Plus you're hitting their hand. I mean, your own hand also, but, if Greyjoy has some draw going, or in a house with draw, you don't care about the discard so much. Or the discard in another way can be a way you can seed your flea bottom. So if you're, like I said, if you're building your deck for these things on this card and they're good for you or don't hurt you as much as they hurt your opponent, I think this is a great plot. But I definitely want to hear what you guys think about the pros of this. The cons, you got to build your deck, like I said, with this in mind. So this only goes in certain decks. It's not just a, hey, this is a great plot that everyone's going to be running for sure. I don't think so. It's very specific. Like I said, it's for certain decks that benefit off these things, or that these things don't hurt. And it also could seed your opponent's flea bottom, I guess, is a bad thing if your opponent's discarding cards that they're choosing, because you are choosing all of this stuff. You're picking which ones you discard. So I'm sure you can look at your Shadows card, choose which one you want to discard. But right now, not many people are running multiple Shadows cards. Like if you look across the board right now when this card's coming out, I'm sure there's not many Shadows cards. So you could probably hit their only Shadow card they're sitting there. And if it's one of the big guys, you know, the ones that you can bring out for like 5 gold, 4 gold, whatever, any of those kind of big flashy effects on characters, that could hurt. This could really hurt. This could be definitely an anti-Shadows card is how I see it. And I think it's pretty good. So I want to know from you guys, what do you guys think? What did I miss? What are your thoughts? I want to hear them. Put them in the YouTube comments below. What kind of faction or deck would you put this in right now? I'm sure there's probably future uses for it we don't know of, obviously. But right now, what deck would you slot this in? Are you excited for this plot? Do you think it's garbage? Does it go in the binder? Leave the comments below. I really want to know. But yeah, let's get to the big one here. There's a reason why you're still watching this video, and it's because I have an agenda here for you guys. The Assault from the Shadows agenda. It has the text, reduce the gold on your revealed plot card by 1. It also doesn't have a trait. It's got a marshalling action. Yield your faction card to choose 1 card in your hand and place it face down in Shadows with a Shadows token on it. While that card is in Shadows, if it does not have the printed Shadow keyword, it gains Shadow X, where X is its printed cost. And this card was designed by 2015 European Joust champion. Sorry if I'm about to butcher your name. Looks like Jesus Valedez Gaspar. I'm so sorry. But yeah, we got a champ card and an agenda, and this is awesome. Thanks again to Fantasy Flight. This one had me scratching my head for a while. Like this is interesting. I don't know if it's bad or it's good, but it definitely pumps the Shadows mechanic. So it turns non-Shadow cards into Shadow cards. And once per round, you kneel your faction card. So instantly what this has made you all do, if you're still here watching this video and you haven't already, you are probably pausing this video or shutting it down to go run to your binder of cards and look at every single card to figure out, does this benefit me for this being in Shadows, and what crazy stuff can I do bringing these cards out of Shadows? So yeah, I just start thinking like you could put big bomb characters in Shadows and you know, protect them from a Valor, hide them in there, either protected from your hand. I mean, we know now, as the previous plot showed us, and we know how Hired Assassin, there are things that can hit cards in Shadows. But yeah, this you know, this could be crazy. Just think about how Hear Me Roar and Never Bet Against the Family jumping big Lancer bodies in out of nowhere in the middle of the challenge phase. Well, now you can drop any character. Like, you don't have to wait for more Shadows cards to come out, guys. You can run this agenda, and now you can make basically any card a Shadows card, which is super cool. Of course, a lot of them won't have Shadows effects. Of course, you're just bringing generic cards out of Shadows, but I mean, hiding them in there if you're worried about your hand getting hit is kind of cool. So yeah, I definitely want to hear in the comments below what you guys think are the coolest cards that could benefit from this. Just like hiding events in Shadows and that kind of thing is kind of cool. You could, you know, I guess, yeah, I'm not sure. Like, could you hide like reactions and stuff in Shadows and then pay the Shadows cost? I think it's an action though, so you couldn't do it at that point. So some cards aren't probably going to work good as Shadows X cards, you know, because they are a reaction, but I'm sure you guys will let me know. And I do like, another pro I like of this agenda is you can't just add it on to a good stuff deck like Wars to Come, for example. You got to build around this. So you're definitely going to have Shadows cards in your deck. And this might actually bring Shadows into the meta. Like, it might actually get to the point here in the 6-pack of this Shadows cycle, and we might actually see decks with multiple cards sitting in Shadows at times. And Shadows might be a thing. So some of those cards that are Shadows related that you're kind of like wondering why FFG put them out already, this seeds those. So if you want to start building, you know, heavy Shadows decks, here you go. And the other thing, when you're doing Shadows decks like this, you're reducing the gold on your revealed plot card by 1. So that makes things more expensive. So when I started talking about putting big characters into Shadows, you know, it's X cost. So for example, I put Euron Greyjoy into Shadows. He's going to cost 7 to get out of Shadows, but at least it was kind of free putting him in. But it really kind of costs 1 because I reduced my plot gold by 1 is the downside of this agenda. And I'm kneeling my faction card to get, let's say, Euron into Shadows to pull him out later. I don't know why I'd want to do that, but I want to hide Euron in there, a big 7 cost body, let's just say. And now I got to save 7 gold for the challenges phase. So the only way I can think of paying for stuff like that and getting that kind of gold is using like Iron Bank has its due, or other effects, maybe like the Targ King, where you can pitch a card to reduce the card in shadows by 3. So we need some other ways of getting gold in the challenges phase, or that kind of stuff is going to be more popular. Other ways of reducing cards coming out of shadows. Those are what's going to make this better and really kick. So I think this might only work out of some houses, but it's cool for things that work off of shadows, like I said, like Brightwater Host. So we've seen him spoiled. He has that whole ability where he can return a card in shadows to its owner's hand. So you can do it to yourself, which helps a unique character you control gain 2 power. So I mean, you could put this in a Tyrell deck and play with Brightwater Host, and now you can just throw any card into shadows. You don't even have to care what it is. It could be anything. Just put it into shadows, and then you can bounce it back to your hand with the Brightwater Host. So you don't even need to bring it out later. You don't even care, and you're getting power that way. Other Tyrell cards it works great with is Old Town Undercity. So that is the location that has the reaction after a card comes out of shadows. Look at the top 3 cards of your deck, add 1 to your hand, place 1 on the bottom of your deck, and place the other on top of your deck, limit once per phase. So now if you're just putting cheap, 0 cost cards or 1 cost cards into shadows, 2 cost cards into shadows, for example, and bringing them out, even if they're just like standard locations or whatever, you're benefiting from card draw off that location. The other thing is the Queen of Thorns. The Shadows Queen of Thorns has a reaction after you win a challenge in which the Queen of Thorns is participating. Choose a card you control in shadows and put it into play. So that right there tells me Tyrell is going to be the most broken house for a long time. They're going to definitely abuse this agenda with Queen of Thorns, I'm sure. Since, like I said, you're popping big 7 cost dudes into shadows for like that downside of reducing 1 gold and kneeling your faction card. And then you're using Queen of Thorns to win a challenge, and you can just pop that 7 coster in play. So there's ways to really take advantage of this with her. So I can see this being really cool out of Tyrell. The other cool cards it works with that I found was Varys. Shadows Varys that's coming out later. He has to reduce the cost to bring Varys out of shadows by 1 for each other card in shadows. So, I mean, if you're just putting any junk into shadows, it's going to help make Varys cheaper. I mean, you don't have to bring this stuff out of shadows that you're putting in there, but it's kind of cool that you can kind of build up and just put stuff into shadows to help that kind of flashy effect go off. The other thing is out of Lannister, like Penny, when you control more cards in shadows than each opponent, she gains an intrigue icon and stealth. So out of Lannister, they seem to be like a shadows focused kind of house. That seems where the cards are going. They have that Bowels of Casterly Rock. After a card you control comes out of shadows, either gain 2 gold or draw a card. So again, like the Tyrell location, they have a way of drawing cards off of shadows cards. And if you didn't like the shadows cards that are out already, you can just play whatever with this agenda and start popping anything into shadows you want to bring out of shadows later. The other one is the Martell location. The Shadow City has that challenge action, kneel the Shadow City and discard a card from shadows to draw 2 cards. So you could literally put cards that you don't want, like dupes for characters that are dead, like dead cards in your hand, or if you're flooded with limited economy, you can, discard that card from shadows that you put in with the agenda and then just draw 2 new cards. So it's like card filtering. So, I mean, it's a little wonky, a little multiple steps there, but it's just a way you can make those locations that you probably looked at before and thought they were useless are automatically, because of this agenda, I think now you have to take a second look at those cards. The other thing is you just basically, if you're running a shadows deck and you felt like you didn't have enough shadows characters in there, or even after the next cycle when we get more shadows cards, this agenda just helps you, you can put more cards in shadows. So if you have shadows effects like these ones I've mentioned, and your deck is kind of crapping on you and you're not seeing your shadows cards, they're kind of, you didn't put enough in your deck, or you feel you don't have enough, or they're just sitting at the bottom of your deck, like it's a crap shuffle. At least this way, with this agenda, you can get those cards into shadows. Like you can build shadows up, you can bring cards out of shadows. It just lets your deck be more consistent if it's a shadow deck. So it's kind of cool the way it can bring that theme out. So it's kind of cool. We might see a new deck type very soon. The other cool, funny thing is you can bait anti-shadows tech. So if you are worried about that plot that we just talked about, the way it discards a card at shadows, you choose the card. So you could use this agenda to just put something into shadows you're not worried about and discard it. Or if the hired assassin is, hunting, trying to kill a character, you can now put things into shadows, and just extra, and it keeps your opponent guessing, and it just puts more options for them there. So that kind of fun little mind game You know, like in Netrunner, hunting for servers and stuff, that kind of thing, or traps or whatever. It can be done with this. The other cons, I got some cons here. So the faction card Neil, and having Old Bill Bone coming out, Neil and faction cards soon out of Shadows, could really hurt this agenda. Could really hurt this agenda and the faction card Neil in general. It's kind of hard. Like, you know, a lot of faction Neil effects out there, and you're choosing to do this one instead. You really have to build around it, like I said before. It's kind of choking your deck a little bit. So if you want to put some nice, expensive, flashy cards in your deck to bring out of Shadows, you're going to need more money for that. And this plot's reducing your gold. So that's kind of like, it's kind of going against the plot. But I guess you're saving money putting the card in Shadows. It's kind of. So it's a little tough. And it can get expensive. And like I said, you need other ways to pay for those Shadows cards if you're putting more expensive Shadow cards in. And definitely a long game deck. So like Rush could definitely probably... You would think crush the deck, I think, if you're like, you know, playing the longer game of hiding cards in Shadows and bringing them out later and playing that later long game, because that's usually what Shadows is about, I would think. This kind of gets ripped out by the Rush. That's kind of prevalent in the meta right now, so it might not be the best time for this agenda. We'll see. But yeah, is this the agenda that we need to bring Shadows into the meta? Is this going to make Shadows a thing? Are we going to see Shadows decks now and see Shadows all over the place because of this, and see people playing the cards that control Shadows and playing anti-Shadows tech? And I want to know what cool Shadows cards, like I said before, what would you want to put into Shadows out of the existing card pool that would really be cool to work with this, and what kind of deck types and stuff? Like, what is your first faction and agenda you're going to put together with this, what's your first faction you're going to put together with this agenda, and what kind of little tricks are you going to do? I'd love to hear it. Put it in the comments below and let me know. But yeah, that's my thoughts. Thanks for listening to me ramble on, guys, about these cards. Sorry this kind of felt a little rushed, but I just want to thank you guys for being here. Thanks for subscribing to the channel. Make sure you hit that like button, and like I said, let me know in the comments below what you guys think about these cards. And thanks to Fantasy Flight, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks a lot.